Hey, what's up, YouTube? As you can see, it's an amazing day here for me. It's really bright and clear. And I had to make sure I got out here today for this. And as you can see, it's phenomenal. I decided that I would talk about something today. Just putting reality together piece by piece. And I've talked about this before in a previous video. And I'll put the link below in the description if you'd like to check that out, if you like this one. And I'm going to talk about time. And the reason why I'm going to talk about time is because I like to break down reality piece by piece by piece. I think it's a great way to understand something by breaking it down and looking at it from a bunch of different angles. It's a great way to learn. You learn each piece by piece. It's easier for you to understand the whole. So I'm going to interpret a few pieces of time today. So, which pieces of time am I going to interpret? Well, the first thing that I'll talk about in regards to time is how time speeds up and slows down over the course of a year. Yeah, time speeds up and time slows down over the course of a year. And then next, I'll talk about how Earth moves through time and how that changes our reality. And then from there, I'm going to talk about the biological time that our physical body endures through conditions on our earth. So, you ready to go? You ready to talk about this? Okay, so let's get started. Our earth goes around the sun and it follows an elliptical orbit. Now, an elliptical orbit is like an oval orbit. It follows an oval orbit around the sun. It's not a perfect circle. It's an elliptical orbit. And along this elliptical orbit, there are two sides or two parts of the orbit that are furthest away from one another. And the sun is not perfectly in the middle of that oval. It's kind of off to the side. Therefore, the sun is closer to us on one part of the elliptical orbit, and the sun is further away from us on the other part of the elliptical orbit. And when is the sun closest to us? The sun is closest to us on around January, early January, I think January 4th. That's when the sun is as closest to us as it gets. And also during that time, during that point, that frame, time is moving slower. Time is moving slower during that time. So we have slow moving time and we have high energy, high ego, high consciousness. All of the things that the sun embodies, we are getting that energy in a magnified fashion during that time. And you probably think of it only as, it's New Year's. So everyone's celebrating New Year's through tradition. And they're making new plans for the future, setting new goals, things like this. Well, let's not overlook that part of what's going on within that. So the time's slow, consciousness, ego, our drive and motivation is really high. And a big reason for that is because the sun is its closest to the earth. Now, some of you may be thinking, it's January, it's cold. Yeah, it is. And that's relative too. It depends on where you are in the earth. Because in the northern hemisphere, in January, the earth is leaning. The northern hemisphere is away from the sun. But if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's closer to the sun. But the entire earth is as close to the sun as it will be for the entire year. And during that time, the earth is really getting energized. And everyone can feel it, no matter where you are on the earth. And during that time, during that point, time is moving really, really, really slow. It's moving really, really slow because we have abundant energy being pulled into the earth, and the earth is actually moving slower along its elliptical orbit. Now, after this point, the earth begins to pick back up speed. And around March, that's when time should be moving. It's moving about at its fastest. And then around July, I think July 7th to be exact, at this point, we're at the other furthest point on the elliptical. And at this point, we're in the season of summer. But, and again, time is moving slow again. It's moving at its slowest point again. But the earth is furthest away from the sun. And again, same concept. If you're in the northern hemisphere, then you're leaning toward the sun. The earth is leaning toward the sun. If you're in the southern hemisphere, the earth is leaning away from the sun. So it's winter for you during the summer, July. And during that time, time is slower, but the energy is low. The consciousness is lower. All the things that the sun embodies, it's weaker during this time. So I'd like for you to think about that next time we get to those points in time, and just kind of look inside and see how you feel. And I think you'll look at this a little bit differently if you do that. So after July 7th, time begins to pick back up speed again. And around October, it's the point where time is moving at its fastest throughout a year again. So that's how time speeds up and slows down over the course of a year. And in regards to time and what I'm talking about here, I'm focusing on our ego, our consciousness, because the sun embodies that. And, of course, all of those things affect how we interpret time. Time is relative on so many different levels in how we interpret it and how it's measured. So now let's talk about the earth moving through space-time. Now, the earth moves through space-time, according to Einstein, space is time. Time is space. Time is moving time is changing or moving because the earth is moving through it. So theoretically, if the earth stopped, time would stop. So we're moving through space-time, and we're following this path, this journey. And when I say we, I'm talking about the earth, but also us on the earth, because we're taking this ride on the earth. And as we move through this path on the earth, our lives are already plotted along the path. And when I say already plotted, I'm talking about there's a path, a band of possibilities of what could be along our paths. So the past, the present, and the future is plotted already. But we can see the past. We can see the present. We can't see the future. Most of us can't see the future. Some of us can turn around and look back and see the future. And yeah, I just said turn around and look back to see the future, because the future is kind of like we're walking backwards to get to where we're going, and we can only see what's behind. We can only see what's in front of us, but we're walking backwards. But it's all there. It's all plotted. And it's all already kind of laid out for you. Now, what seems to not be laid out or plotted is our interpretation and our reaction to what we're experiencing as we take this ride on earth and follow our path and our purpose. And I don't want to get too deep into saying that life is predestination, everything's determined, and things like that. I think that would be a bit too far to go. But I'll just say this and I'll move on. We are destined to meet some people, or destined to meet a certain type of people or certain type of person in our lives. And when we meet that person, no matter how incredible, phenomenal, great, no matter how excellent the chemistry was between you and that person, no matter the relationship, those paths have to diverge at some point. Each has to continue and do its own thing at one point. Now, those paths can stay together for a set amount of frames, but eventually they have to split apart. Okay, so now let's talk about, and I'll finish up here, time in regards to us on earth. I guess physical time, biological time, that type of time. Now, on earth, depending on where you go, time speeds up, time slows down. Yeah, and so depending on where you are on earth, time is moving slower or faster for you. And here's what I mean, and I'll just give you one brief example of what I mean, because I could go in many different directions with this and explaining it. But if you talk about just elevation, simply living at elevation, low elevation, high elevation, there's a time difference factor in living in different elevations. For example, if you live at sea level or low elevation, time moves slower for you. And if you live at a higher elevation, time moves faster for you. And yeah, that it does mean you age faster. But there's some catches to these rules. There's catches to everything. For example, if you live at an elevation, there's other things that slow time down for you, even though time's generally overall speeded up. For example, at an elevation, you're closer to the sun. You're getting more energy. You're exposed to more energy. And usually it's colder. The temperature's lower, which helps your body, which is mostly water, become a crystal and absorb the energy from the sun more safely, more effectively, more efficiently. So, time's, relative even, on Earth, depending on your location, where you're at. And nature, your relationship with nature, this is important because it affects how time speeds up or time slows down for you. And what I mean by this is I'm talking about your diet, and not just whether it's healthy or not, but also how responsible you are in your choices in what you eat. And I'm talking about Uh, and when I say that, I'm not just talking about choosing the healthy choice. I'm also talking about choosing the right choice and not overtaking anything that you know not taking more than your share of the world. And I guess I'm talking about meat here. And also with nature, it's just being a part of it, not divorcing yourself from it, being a part of it. The more you're a part of it, that slows time down for you. You separate yourself from it, time speeds up for you. And I guess an example of this is, think about, if you've seen someone with a pet, or if you go to the zoo, the conditions have to be just right for the animal to live, or the animals die. And same thing with us. The conditions have to be just right. In nature, nature is the perfect conditions for us. And we must not forget what nature is. Some of us don't even know what nature is anymore. And lastly, movement. Movement slows time down. And the way movement slows time down is, it's a little bit tricky to understand, but it's simple, really. And I guess in order to explain that, we'd have to talk about, I guess, we use an example of like an elite athlete or someone who's in phenomenal shape. And if you're in phenomenal shape, you're getting more from less. And what I mean by that, you're getting more from less, is that you use less effort and you get more production from what you do. And like elite athletes, they tend to have low heartbeats and take less breaths. And this is all the time, whether they're exercising or not exercising, whether they're resting or sleeping or whatever. And this is because their body is trained to do so, and their body is fulfilling its potential. And you fulfilling your potential is also a factor in slowing time down. And when I talk about potential, it's not necessarily just physical. It's everything. It's your purpose in life, those potentials. And sometimes you got to find out what those potentials are. And in some cases, you have to just create those potentials. And that's part of the human experience, learning and finding out, and just tackling this whole thing and unlocking the mysteries. So I'll wrap this up right here. Thank you for sitting through my video and listening to my thoughts. I love you. I appreciate you. And a lot more to come. And we're going to go in some really unique directions in the future. And I hope to see you there. Thank you.